Hi everybody, this is Dear Mama Sal and we are live on a Friday afternoon, which means it is our skills broadcast. And for those of you who might be new to the broadcasts, just to let you know, we do 3 broadcasts a week. One at Friday lunchtime Pacific time, where we try to learn something. One on Friday evenings where we try to laugh a bit more. And then another one on Sunday, Sunday afternoon, which is our Soul Sunday, where we try, we just relax and try and take it easy. I see I've got my mini vacuum cleaner out here. I just happened to see it in the reflection here, but do any of you have one of these? I want to tell you, I got one for my laptop to clean it off, but boy, do I find lots of uses for this little thing. And it's got an incredibly, you hear it charge up. It's got a pretty powerful suction on it. Okay, anyway, so I'll put that out of the way. Before we start, just to do an update, because hi Isabel and hi Jody. I just wanted to update you, because I know you guys like the gardening story. For those of you who don't know, I'm demonstrating what is possible just on your windowsill. This is where I've been growing stuff. And just an update, I found out that peppers dehydrate beautifully. Again, just cut up the end of a pepper that I had a new one, so I wanted to not waste the end of another one, and just literally put them in my toaster oven on the lowest thing overnight. I've got to keep it on function on my toaster oven, and literally by the next morning they were, I don't know if I can show you, but they were literally like dried tomatoes. So that's good to know, and I will continue to be doing that from this point onwards. The update on the spring onions is they like being hydroponically grown. And for those of you who don't know how that works, I put my green onions, when I get them, when they look like this, I put them into water. And then what will happen is, and I immediately cut off at the base. And then I dry what is there. But then this is how they grow, just in water. The only thing is, when you do it just in water like this, they're inclined to get a bit grungy at the bottom here and eventually disintegrate. So what I'm doing now is to do them hydroponically, which means that I'm doing the same thing, but the water starts to go down, and with it, it pulls the roots down. So now my roots on this one are not sitting in water. They're just going down to get the water in the bottom one. Makes sense? That's called hydroponics. And Jody, I'm going to call this plant Jody 1 because this was the original one, Jody, and it's loving being hydroponically grown. You can see the roots are now down into the bottom area. So, and what I like about the system, I've now got 3. I've got one there, one there, a second one here, and this was the original one. I've now got a choice of leaves. I can have some big leaves and some spring, some small leaves and some medium leaves. And so this one is just starting to come through now. It should be, in about a week, you'll be able to see it nicely. So, by the way, for those of you who don't know, we're going to be talking today about food anyway. So this is all important. This is another bean that I'm growing. And as you can see, that I've just literally got it in a plastic thing here. But I'm amazed how quickly beans grow. Now, why is that important to me? Jack and the Beanstalk, right? And yeah, I can hear you saying that, Sal. Yeah, didn't you know? But here's the interesting thing. I'm trying to work out, I've got a couple in the garden already, but I'm trying to work out how do I grow it inside ready for the winter, if it's possible. And that's going to be, how I'm going to do it. And then the other thing I did this week was start being conscious. Hi, Nasha. Start being conscious about not throwing bread away. So now my bread that I'm not using, when it's like time for new bread, I put it all in the blender, make breadcrumbs, and then I toast the breadcrumbs. So now I'm collecting this. Why is this important? Breadcrumbs are really nice to add taste to things. I could do breadcrumbs with seasoning around cheese if necessary, if I had cheese. As you will see, I'm thinking what would be of value. And I'm going to be keeping, my breadcrumbs in bottles. And Jody said, make sure that it's properly dry. Otherwise, you'll have moldy breadcrumbs. So what I do is I literally put them on in the evening while I'm watching television and just keep moving them around to make sure that they get plenty of distribution of air. I have them on a mat. And then at night, after they've really baked already, I just leave them in the oven overnight on a very low heat. And that works. Okay, so there we go. I wanted to let you know that today's broadcast is really important. And the reason it's really important is because I just want to get, just bear with me a second. I just want to get this up on my what do you call it? Tablet. For some reason, I didn't do that before I started, which is very bad of me. But in the meantime, if you've got any updates for me, I know that it is whose? It is Beth's grandson's birthday today, and I know Manon's got a birthday tomorrow, and also I believe Jeannie's daughter's birthday tomorrow. So let's just get this. We're nearly there, people. There we go. That's what I need. And so any other updates that you have, let us know. All right. Here we go. Now I've got if you've got topics, by the way, that you'd like me to talk about, please make sure that you send them to DearMamaSal@gmail.com, and I'll add them to the list. And if I feel that it's something that my audience will appreciate, then I will add it to my list. Sometimes I don't add it to the list because I don't think it is something that the viewers, there are enough of the viewers that would need it. So here we go. If you haven't subscribed, please do so right here. And also click on the bell, and the bell's going to ask, do you want all notifications? And the answer to that is yes. Because in case I put up some special notification or whatever, you might want to be able to have that. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter, because that's where I update you on the extended family. Today we're going to be talking about food, but particularly about rationing. It's all part of my series on Be Prepared, Not Scared. And you might say, rationing? Well, I'm old enough to remember food rationing in England. And I'm going to be talking a little bit about that. But before I do, I just want to read you a quote. You've all heard this quote before, but I want you to remember it. Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. That was originally George Santayana in 1905 that said that, but it was repeated again by Winston Churchill. And he changed it slightly in 1948. And he said, Those who fail to learn from history are condemned to repeat it. So that is a really important thing. And that is why I decided I wanted to talk a little bit about what happened during the war years. And you're probably wondering why, Sal, why is the war time relevant? Well, let me just say something. The world has never faced a hunger emergency like this, experts say. It could double the number of people facing acute hunger to 265 million by the end of the year. Now, when do you think that was published? Do you is that like way back whenever? No, this was published this month. They are expecting 265 million people to be suffering from acute hunger by the end of this year. I don't know about you, but that's a pretty big wake-up call. And in case you're thinking, yeah, maybe not so much, listen to what I found. In Nairobi, Kenya, in the largest slum in Kenya's capital, people are desperate to eat, and they set off a stampede during a recent giveaway of flour and cooking oil, leaving scores injured and 2 people dead. In India, thousands of workers are lining up twice a day for bread and fried vegetables to keep hunger at bay. And across Colombia, poor households are hanging red clothing and flags from their windows and balconies as a sign that they are hungry. It's already happening. Okay, so what I wanted to do is to make sure that we all understand, because knowledge is king here, that if this is already happening, you know it's going to get far worse. Yeah, heartbreaking, Jody, I quite agree. All right, so I just want to draw the picture because sometimes the picture is easier to see. So here we've got all the millions of people that are going to be even more so impacted with a lack of food. So we know that the world will do what they can to help feed them. True? I'm pretty sure you know that. All right? But who is the world? All right? That is likely to be Europe, USA, Canada, all the first world countries are likely to do what they can to help feed the people who are now starving. That'll be who will be really in severe food shortage. When that happens, do you understand that the food that the people in the US, of Europe, whatever, their food will, the amount of food available will be that much less because this much is going here. Does this make sense? We will be trying to help feed others, and therefore we will have less for ourselves. And so it is really important for us to know that this could happen. And when that does happen, which I believe it will, what they will need to do is to ration the food that we have in our countries. Now, we've already seen rationing at the stores, where you can only buy one of this, one of that, whatever. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about severe rationing. And I thought, as a history lesson, I'd give you an idea of what happened in the past. And the reason I thought I'd tell you about it is I can remember walking down across the fields to my local store with my ration book, and I had a coupon to get candy. I was allowed a little bit of candy every week, and I can remember walking and going to get that piece of candy. And so the reality I wanted to let you know about is this, that the UK, not America, but in the UK, which is where I'm originally from, 14 years of food rationing ended at midnight on the 4th of July, 1954, when the restrictions on the sale and purchase of meat and bacon were lifted. This happened 9 years after the end of the war. In other words, it took 9 extra years for the food supply of beef and everything else to get back to normal. 9 years. So I don't want to scare the life out of any of you, but I do want you to be aware that this could happen. And if you are aware and prepared and not scared, then you will already start thinking about how to do this. So I thought I'd give you a rundown of what adults were allowed per week. They were allowed to have 4 ounces of bacon or ham. And that would be about the palm of your hand. Okay, that bit. That much bacon or ham per person, per adult, per week. Okay? Now, let me ask you something. If you got this much bacon or ham, about a deck of cards, what would you do with it? If you knew that's all you were going to have for the week, what do you think you would do with it? Because that's what I'd like you to think about. I'd like you to start looking, if you're a big bacon fan, maybe you want to start dehydrating bacon. It's like, if you really love bacon, you may want to start thinking about how to preserve it right now. And because to me, it was like, wow, that isn't very much bacon or ham. Or, yeah, Beth's going, I just gobble it up all at once. It's bacon. Yes. And, for some people, I'm sure that's what they did. All right. They had that one meal. By the way, in terms of other meat, this was really exciting. You were allowed the equivalent of about a shilling's worth. Now, a shilling's worth was about 2 pork chops. So per week, per adult. All right. So you were allowed, if you like, 1 of today's regular portions per week. And again, I'd like you to think about if that was your reality. What would you do? Yeah, Jodi's going, bacon is a food group, all on its own. Right? So let's think about that. If you could only have this much meat in a week over and above the bacon, so one day you gobble down the bacon, but what about this? What would you do with your allotment, if you like, of meat? Now, some of you are going, well, I guess we're all going to be pretty healthy eaters. And there's a lot that made me think when I was looking at this list, there was a lot that made me think, yeah, we actually will be eating a lot more healthily. Yeah. And you know something, Naisha? We are all looking at things that we love, and it's going to be hard, but it's doable. All right. If that's what it takes, we'll do it. But I want you to be aware that it can happen. Not that it will, but it could. So now then, I want you to think about how much meat. Now, I know not all of you are meat eaters, but those that are, how much meat do you eat a week? And if you could only have, if you could only have 1 serving of meat, I'd probably be slicing mine pretty thinly, you know, and having a couple of strips of meat with stuff during, you know, with other things. That's my feeling about it. Or I'm not sure if you were allowed to do it. There's part of me that goes, how many weeks could I store up the coupons and then buy a chicken, you know, a whole chicken, or, you know, I don't know how that works. Beth is saying lots of peanut butter if there's a shortage of meat. Start buying peanut butter, people. You know, I'm busy stocking up on tins of ham, shrimp, chicken, you know, not just little bits. And as you know, I'm also stocking up on things with meat in them, chunky soups, things like Chef Boyardee that has got meat in it and so forth. About 4 to 6 ounces per meal. That would need to be cut way down. Yes, Jody. That's so you've already worked that out, how much you're eating. And so what I'm saying is be aware, be prepared, not scared. It could go down a whole lot more. How about butter? Butter, this was interesting. You were allowed about half a stick of butter per week. And the chances are you probably would say, that would be fine. I don't use that much butter anymore. Okay, so, but think about it. That would also include, you know, cooking, other things. You know, think about, be aware of how many times you get the butter out. Just so you can go, let me just learn to have a little bit less. If you could start learning to do that now, you'd be more prepared. But you were also allowed to have margarine, which wasn't as good as it is today. And you got about a stick of that a week. Now, you're probably saying, well, yeah, it's way more than I need necessarily. But what happened was that people, you know, used to eat bread and butter or margarine a lot to fill themselves up. And so to me, it is interesting to sort of see, you know, because our eating habits have changed. Yes, Jody's saying, do you remember the margarine came in blocks with a color additive to make it yellow? And you kneaded it into the, yeah, you know, it's like margarine was very different than from that we have today. So, but I'm thinking, I don't know about you, but I've actually stopped using butter or margarine on my bread a lot. You know, if I were, I used to always have margarine or butter, but now if I'm putting peanut butter on it, why do I need butter? And basically, why do I need butter on my bread at all? And so I basically have stopped using butter on my bread. Is anybody else? I use it for cooking. And baking, you know, but that's about it. So give that some thought. And if you really like your cakes and things, maybe start stocking up on things like, if you can get it, because I couldn't get it this week, Jody. I did try to get powdered butter and powdered eggs even, and I couldn't get them here in Canada. So cheese, this is going to be my big challenge. Cheese. You were allowed to have 2 ounces of cheese. Now, what does that look like? That would look like 8 small cubes, you know, a week. I don't know about you, I eat that plus some a day. Or 1.5 slices of cheese. So I'm thinking that's really going to be a challenge for me. So guess what I've started stocking up on? It may not be very healthy, but I'm stocking up on cheese whiz. And anything that I can get, powdered cheese, if I can get it, you know what I mean? Anything that's going to help me get that cheese taste, if it happens. So cooking fat, that would be your Crisco, whatever type stuff. And I would think that would, you also include things like lard, all right? We don't use lard as much these days, but obviously it was a big thing in the war years. But the other thing is this: think smart, because you remember that piece of bacon that you got? If you kept the fat from there, you would have extra fat. Does that make sense? So don't, the thing to get in the habit of doing is not wasting anything. Don't waste leftover bread. It's like repurposing food is what you will learn to do. I don't know, is this interesting for you guys? Because the next one is milk. You were allowed 3 pints of milk per week. And that's about 1.5 liters. Now, I don't know about you, that's okay. Jody's saying, yes, we had a tin can for bacon drippings on the stove all the time, right? And that was used for that. I've got it in my fridge. I've got what do you call it? A bottle of bacon drippings in my fridge. And it's wonderful if you're cooking certain things to, I use it sometimes to do a base for gravies and stuff. I just love to add that. So milk, 3 pints a week. Nyasha, do you do pints or, you must do liters, right? So about 1.5 liters per adult per week. So that would be okay, I think. But again, you know that I'm busy trying to get as much powdered milk as I can into my life so that I can have that in storage. Because, yeah, eggs cooked in bacon drippings are delicious. Exactly. There are certain things that just taste so much better. So think about that. Okay, what would you do without that much milk? When you couldn't just go to the fridge and go get milk, where every time and I want you to do that, every time you use milk, think about it. For example, I found out, just because, I keep testing these things, that I make crepes as comfort food. I love crepes with lemon and imitation sugar now. But, it's just so funny because I've learned that using water and a little bit of milk powder makes a better crepe than using milk. I don't know why. It's lighter. All right. Sugar. Now, I'm pretty sure that most of us are cutting down on sugar anyway. But you were allowed 8 ounces. Hang on a second. I wonder what 8 ounces would be. Jody, how much is 8 ounces? Oh, here we go. There we go. All right, so a cup. You were allowed a cup of sugar per adult per week. Right, I have to convert to American. You understand? Luckily, this Pyrex thing actually has it on there. So that's how much sugar you were allowed. And you're going, interesting. And that was for everything: baking, coffee, tea, whatever. So that's how much you were allowed per week. Now, if you're in a household of 2 people and one of them doesn't use sugar, you understand you ended up with it more, so think about that. Jam. This was an interesting one to me. You were allowed a pound of jam. Hi, Sandy. Good to see you. A pound of jam every 2 months. Now, a pound is the equivalent of 1 pound is, what's a pound in metric? Hang on, I've got to find that out. That's my phone. But you were allowed that every 2 months. It seems like a lot, doesn't it? Let me just do the calc on that one. I didn't do it. £1 is about 3.6 cups. That everybody understands cups. About 4 cups of preserves, jam type stuff, every 2 months. Yeah, half a kilo. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. So would that be enough? And some of you going, wow, I don't even have that now. So to me, no, it's the correct info, Jody. Thank you. So I don't know about you, but I could handle that, I think. So, but what I also am doing is I'm stocking up on Marmite. I'm a Marmite person. I grew up with Marmite, and if I didn't have jam, I need Marmite. And as that's really important to me. Right, how about tea for the tea drinkers? And obviously the Brits are big tea drinkers. They were allowed 2 ounces of tea a week. Okay, let's do this, people. 2 ounces is just a quarter of a cup a week. So I think I found out that a tea bag contains about 2 to 3 grams of tea, and you need about 5 grams for a teaspoon, right? So, it's not very much. So you can understand people made tea and they steeped it for a long time, and then they decanted it and warmed it up, and then they made it again. It wasn't quite as strong, but then they, kept using the same tea bag or the same, loose tea over and over again, and until they literally wrang every bit of tea out of it. You can imagine Brits without tea would be very difficult. Basically, it was about 30 servings, and the Brits, on average, I would say, drink at least a couple of cups of tea a day. So that wasn't too bad if they were careful. How about eggs? This one stunned me. You were allowed 1 egg per week. And you were allowed some powdered egg. You were allowed 1 tin of powdered egg every 2 months. And that tin was the equivalent to 12 fresh eggs every 2 months. So if you can get your hands on powdered eggs, you may, and by the way, they didn't taste great in those days, but they taste a lot better today than they did before. I would suggest that you just start, if you can find it, just add it to your shopping list, just in case. And if you don't ever end up needing it, they're great to use in baking. Jody will tell you, she's an expert on this. Candy, that was my big thing as a kid, because I remember having the coupon for candy. You were allowed 12 ounces of candy. That's quite a bit, because it's so about a cup and a half, 8 is a cup. So about a cup and a half worth of candy a week. So you can have candy every night if you wanted to, just 1 or 2. Flour. This is a biggie, people. An ordinary adult was allowed about 9 ounces of bread per day, part of which may be taken in flour or cakes. 9 ounces of bread a day. So that's 8, 9, just a cup of flour a day, really. Ooh. So basically that would be about 9 slices of bread a day, or the equivalent flour for cake. You could buy cakes. Well, Jody, I'm glad you're finding it interesting. I thought you guys are rational enough for me to be able to have this conversation. I'm hoping that we will never need it, but I'm also hoping that each time you go to the fridge this week, and each time you go to your your pantry, that you think about this. Start getting stuff that will last, because as I'm saying, whatever you buy one plus a bigger size. Don't buy the small size, buy the bigger size, because you will be grateful a year from now. I hope a year from now that you will say, thank you for warning us, because I'm not sure if I will ever be able to get enough to last me for 6 or 10 years, but at least I'm making a start. Now, I didn't see coffee. I didn't see coffee, and because I was looking at England, where they didn't really do a big, but I remember that coffee was gold dust. I do remember people, when I think about the stories that people told that were really high commodity items, coffee and, funny enough, pantyhose. Well, in those days, nylons, were like gold dust. You couldn't get them. So I am overstocking with coffee, because I do believe that I don't know how long. I mean, I'm not too fussy. I'm not going to worry about what date there is on a can of coffee. Yeah, so I would imagine, my sense is that coffee, we already know, is a very high price commodity. Expect the price of coffee to just go insane. So what I want you to do is make sure that you think things through a bit. From what we know with the pandemic, now that they're starting to relax and let people go out more, that the death rate is going to spike astronomically, right? I mean, we're all ready for that, I hope. But what I'm thinking about is, will there still be people working the fields? Yes. Will they have to, as far as possible, socially distance? Yeah, but will they? You see, from what I'm seeing already, and maybe I've got it wrong, but from what I'm seeing already, the people who are going to be really impacted now are the minorities. The very people that do most of the work in terms of farming are going to be the people most impacted. And therefore, we want to give some thought to that. I think the price of food, as you know, will escalate horrifically. But I also believe that, we're going to lose a lot of the workers, farm-type workers, out of the system. The other thing is this: I'm pretty sure that you all are smart enough to realize that of all these horrific job losses that we've had, and I believe it's the worst job report in history, not all those jobs that we lost are going to be available again. So if you still have a job, be very, very grateful. And if you don't have a job, maybe be very aware that you may not get your job back again. So plan B might be important, or C or D. Yeah, Sandy's saying, I can't do without my coffee. Time to stock up. That's why I'm doing these broadcasts. Let me show you. Hang on a sec. How many have I got here? Sandy, I've already got 4 cans, and I think they went. There was another brand that went on sale this week, and I think I bought another 2. I don't care. You know, I quite honestly, being without coffee is not something I want to look forward to, and so this is just like what worries me is the rate at which I drink coffee. Sandy, how many cups do you have a day? You've got 2 extra right now, so give it some thought. All I'm saying to you is every time you see coffee on sale, get one. You know what I mean? My attitude is anytime, I don't know what the equivalent is in the States, but if I see coffee where there's a can for under $10, I'm buying it. Not only for me. Not only for me. Hi, Daniel. Good to see you. Not only for me, but what about, I'm thinking about how many people will as I said, I remember people talking about coffee being like a currency. You could buy things with coffee because people were so desperate for coffee. So I want you to think about that. All right, you have 2 to 3 a day because it helps me stay level with my blood sugars and insulin. Yes, exactly. We need it for our medical reasons, Sandy. Nyasha saying, it's better to know than not know. This may or may not happen, but in the light of the virus, resources would take a long time to be manufactured and shelves to be restocked. Well, you know something? Thank you, Nyasha, for seeing what I'm trying to do. I honestly am saying that I believe that knowing is not fun. Oh, sorry, Isabel. Jody's just reminded me that Daniel and Isabel are one and the same. So, but what I believe is knowledge is king, all right? So be prepared a little bit. If you can grow a little bit of vegetables, because what are you not see? You're probably going, what about the vegetables, Sal? What about lettuce? What about vegetables? Well, you know what people did? They grew their own. So here is the question. You're going, but I live in an apartment. Where would I grow my own? Well, guess what? Every scrap of land, that little strip of grass that's outside your apartment building, people started growing vegetables there. Any piece of land that was possible, they started to grow vegetables. So here's what I would like you to do. Think seeds, okay? Red pepper. I'm not throwing these away anymore. I'm just leaving them out to dry out. I got 2 orange peppers going. Now, this is enough seed for me to be able to share peppers with probably the whole of my street. All right, so now Jody's saying most of the vegetables I wanted weren't available to order this time. Yeah, it's going to get worse, Jody. So you understand what I'm saying? If you're lucky enough to find a pepper, save the seeds. If you're lucky enough, right? You know that I'm busy growing mint. You know I'm busy growing lettuce. You know I'm busy growing onions. You know that I am busy dehydrating rather than wasting. Okay? think about it. What vegetables do you love? I found out you can dehydrate carrots very easily, peppers very easily. Obviously, I can grow onions pretty easily, so I'm not so worried about that. But now what I want to know is, can I grow peas and beans inside? You see, I'm not so much worried about the summer because we can grow things outside. It's about what do we do in the winter? All right, so Sandy's saying the job market was already a problem. My husband has been looking for a long time. And now, with everything happening, the only thing he can find is something that would put him at risk and in turn put the family at risk. Yep. And you know, that is the dilemma we're going to have. And that is today's reality. And it's so, to me, if you are lucky enough, and I know this sounds strange, if you're lucky enough to be retired on disability or whatever, you know, and already have money coming to you, in a way, we are more fortunate than those that are younger and healthier, because, you know, that's the bigger problem. But, you know, what I would look at is maybe have your husband look at what is needed locally. You know, there are an awful lot of people that are now stuck, people of my age that are stuck inside because, I mean, I go out at 7 o'clock and go bang and pots and pans. Oh, actually, you know what I do at 7 o'clock? I blow my horn. Yeah, it's very exciting. And the neighborhood love it. You know, it's like at 7 o'clock, I blow my horn. And it's, you know, you look at it and go, we are going to change the way we live, but totally. So it's going to be scary, really scary. And we're going to have to make decisions the same as Sandy's family, right? Does the husband go to work at a high risk job just to put food on the table? And, you know, if you remember, people would take any job just to put food on the table. And so I would like to say, for those of us, you know, who can, be aware that what we can do to help. Oh, okay, Nash, good to see you. But what we can do to help is important. In other words, those of you who are creative, you know, those of you who are skilled at growing things, you know, why do you think I'm trying to show you that you can literally grow food, you know, in a couple of, yeah, plastic containers? And this was a butter lettuce I got from the store, all right? And it's growing nicely, thank you. So to me, it's not what can't I do, or what will, I'm looking at what can I do, and I'm starting doing it now, because by the time it really hits, I want to be ahead of the game. Maybe you do too, I don't know. So what I want you to do is really think about, how do I use less, and start practicing it now. Why? If rationing comes, you will not have such a shock. If you're already down to maybe eating much less meat, I don't mean that you can't have it, just start lessening the amount of meat that you need, all right? Maybe you're used to having 3 slices of turkey, you know, have 2. Start doing that, and then see if 1 satisfies. Because I found as well, and I've said this many, many times, if you can buy a roast of food, do that. By the way, I tried to buy a freezer. I'm going to keep talking about this. The earliest I could purchase a freezer would be July or August. Think about that. But it's on my list this week to buy a freezer, even though there's that long a wait for it, because I believe it will be necessary. And the question is, there's part of me that goes, yes, but what if I fill it up with food and then we have a power failure? Well, then maybe I need to get a generator as well to back it up. I don't know. So it's interesting, but let's remember the reality. Rationing will keep you alive and also help other people stay alive. How many of you would be prepared to be rationed if you knew that it helped keep people alive? Right? And I would like you to think about that. Because that is, if we've already got to the situation where right now the prediction is over 200 million people. 200 million? What was that figure? It was way more than that, wasn't it? 276 million or something. 265 million by the end of this year. Can you imagine what this is going to be like in India? Can you imagine what this is going to be like in Africa? It was interesting. I was hearing from my brother in Africa, and he said, "Oh, we're good. We got food to the end of the year." And I'm going, "That's, it's amazing." But I'm hoping that he's thinking past that, because he's only thinking about himself. You see, the reason I'm busy keeping seeds is I can help other people grow their own food. Why? I'm keeping the seeds. Does that make sense? And this year, as soon as my vegetable garden has grown, I'm also going to be, filling up my planter pots, adding, a red pepper here, a cantaloupe there. I'm, just why? Because I want to make sure I can grow them this year. And, the seeds from one cantaloupe, from one melon, will keep you in food, if you think about it, for probably 5 years more. Keep your street in cantaloupe for 5 years. You see, that's the amazing thing that I want you to understand. I mean, I can't count very well, but how many seeds do you reckon are in just one? Okay. 50, maybe more. And I want you to understand that when food is short, I'm going to be starting, hydroponically, some orange and red peppers or green peppers, and letting my neighbors have them. By the way, I've already got chives and parsley growing beautifully. Every Monday, I give some to the neighbors. I've got chives, rosemary, and parsley growing. So, it's just like I'm already getting into the habit of doing that. And what I am going to do this year, because I'm pretty sure that if anything does grow, if I can get past the slugs eating them. And by the way, I'm now collecting my coffee grounds. Thank you so much. I think it was Sandy or Brenda, maybe. That apparently used coffee grounds deter slugs. You're going, I got lots of that. It's just not going into the compost anymore. It's now going. But remember, when it rains, I will need to put more out because the rain will. Yeah. Anyway. So I'm looking at it. I'm trying to think, how can I help feed my community if necessary? From my little pathetic garden. Not half an acre or whatever, but I'm pretty sure right? That they're going to be people who would be very happy to have some fresh lettuce. And what if I could say, do me a favor, just twice a week, make sure there's enough water in here. And I've got a feeling it will grow for some time. I don't know. That's the experiment. When did I start this one? April, I think. All right, early April. Jody, do you have a memory? But it is still growing and still giving me food. This one, the latest one, I definitely got in May. So, and early May. So I'm going to start marking what days I get those lettuces. Not all of them work, by the way. Some will not work. So just see what you can do. But if you imagine if you didn't have any fresh greenery in your diet anymore and you could have some lettuce. Do you think you'd be happy with that? Now, tomatoes, are really, really easy. I've said this a number of times. You literally take any tomato that you've got in your fridge, grape tomato, regular tomato, whatever, and just slice it and put that in earth just until it grows. Once you see, the point is this, that I'm waiting for this to get lots of roots going on it. All right, you can see that it's got a couple, you can see here. That's actually the stick, but this is a root. And that is a root. Oh, we got quite a few roots there. I'm waiting for this to become a ball of roots. When that happens, I will know this bean is pretty strong. I'm going to put it in hydroponically. All right. All I will do is I will put some holes in the bottom here, and then, actually I won't. I will take the solid lump and put it into this system. That's my goal. I think it's possible. I don't know until I try it. But I'm hoping as I keep trying these things that some of you will also get to try some as well. And that's what I'm looking at is, what if what if you could add, yellow peppers to a meal? Do you think that you'd be grateful? Well, I can already. By the way, we found out mushrooms dehydrate beautifully. So start thinking about not wasting, all right? Not wasting, but saving. Now you're going, well, that's not very much, Sal. No, but I'm going to be doing this every week. And if necessary, I'm going to be doing this every night. Now, it's not just for me, right? That's what I want you to understand. This is not just so I can feed me. This is so I can help people who maybe have lost their job and can't get another one. Very, very important. I am now buying roasts and I am cooking them into portions. But that portion that would normally serve me once, I am now making sure that I use it, half of it for a lunch and half of it for a dinner. That's how I'm cutting down. What I normally would have been one portion, which already is half the portion I would have had 10 years ago or 5 years ago. Jody, I want you to give some thought, if you would, please. I was trying to think, for those of us who are pre-diabetic and diabetic, just by cutting down this much food, we would actually be healthier. Am I correct on that? But the other thing is, think about what you can supplement it with. For example, I am making sure that I buy oats every week and stockpiling it. I have thrown, thank you for the word of warning on that one, Jody. I have thrown cloves into the area where I'm keeping my grains, all right? Because the bugs don't like cloves, the smell of cloves. I am also starting to really be aware of drinking a lot more water. Jody has proven that you can go quite easily a couple of days without any food. Just make sure your electrolytes are good and just make sure you have plenty of liquid. Fasting is not the end of the world. Jody's doing it on a voluntary basis and doing really well. Jody, I've been a little bit amazed because you will remember I said to you yesterday that just warn me today if my blood sugar jumps up that I had caramel corn the night before. And my blood sugar was 6.5 this morning, which is great. And the only thing I can think of, two things. Number one, I am taking Metamucil every day, which I know helps lower my blood sugar. I try to make oat muffins. I have one oat muffin a day. More oats, right? And then I am definitely upping the amount of water. So it's again, what can I have? And what can I cook with what I have left? I am looking at, the fiber and protein help, yeah. But I also had the caramel corn. So, we know I'm not being perfect. But, for example, I tried an experiment with some leftover mashed potato. I'm, as a diabetic or pre-diabetic, mashed potato isn't high on the list of things I'm meant to eat. But you know what I did? I rolled some in the breadcrumbs. I took some dried and I made a ball and I rolled it in the breadcrumbs and I spritzed it and then I baked it for a while and had it with plum sauce. I had 3 balls with plum sauce. I thought I died and gone to heaven. And the funny thing is, it tasted magnificent. Plum sauce is high on my list, by the way, of things I need to to get. Think about that as well. Vegetables and fruits. Think about the fruits that you love. Okay, I'm going to start dehydrating some fruit. I don't have room to freeze it, so I'm going to start dehydrating it. It's going to be quite the journey, I think. But it'll be wonderful, won't it, if I can make shepherd's pie for people. But I would definitely, if you have a way of doing it, start learning how to grow potatoes and carrots. And I'm not sure, if you're lucky enough to have a balcony, it's big enough. People are growing their own wall of vegetables already just because they can. What works really well is one of those shoe holders that goes on the back of a door. Fill all those pockets up with earth and start getting some vegetables going. Learn how to have an indoor wall of good stuff. It needs plenty of light, but that means that your hydro bill or your electricity bill will go up a little bit. And you know something? If it keeps you fed, it's cheap. So think about that. Think about the things we can do. So what I did is to make sure that we stayed in reality, because that is what I hope for. I found you guys some quotes somewhere about world hunger. And I thought that would help our perspective. The fact that we are going to feel possibly that we've got less than we want, I want you to see that we are going to be lucky. Mother Teresa said, if you can't feed 100 people, then feed just one. If half the world can feed one person, the whole world will be fed. You understand that? That's the principle. And I think it's really important that we understand that. So look at how you can do things to help feed yourself, but then maybe your neighbor if you need to. We know that a peaceful world cannot long exist, 1/3 rich and 2/3 hungry. Do you know who said that? President Jimmy Carter, way back when. Overcoming poverty is not a task of charity. It is an act of justice. Like slavery and apartheid, poverty is not natural. It is man-made and it can be overcome and eradicated by the actions of human beings. Sometimes it falls on a generation to be great. You can be that generation. Let your greatness blossom. Those were the words of Nelson Mandela. And you remember he always said, what we fear is what we can do, right? He always said that the greatest fear that we have is what we actually can do. It's not what we can't do, it's what we can. And that is a fear for a lot of people. It was said that you can't build a peaceful world on empty stomachs and human misery. And remember, these quotes came before this pandemic. And listen to this one. This is Jonathan Sachs said, close to 1 billion people, 1/8 of the world's population, still live in hunger. Each year, 2 million children die through malnutrition. It is happening at a time when doctors in Britain are warning of the spread of obesity. We are eating too much while others starve. It's not just that we're eating too much. We are eating unhealthily. And so, in a way, the pandemic will teach us to eat more healthily, I believe. Fidel Castro of Cuba said, nowhere in the world, in no act of genocide, in no war, are so many people killed per minute, per hour, and per day as those who are killed by hunger and poverty on our planet. And it's about to get a whole lot worse. Buzz Aldrin, the astronaut, for some reason, that word did not want to come out of my mouth. It was getting tied up. If we conquer space, we can conquer childhood hunger. Think about that. How many children are going to die because of the coming hunger? We will lose almost, I would think, almost a generation of some cultures. And, that's what we need to think about. In Africa, we already have so much. In India, we also already have so much poverty and malnutrition. What's going to happen now? And this was said way before this came. The world's hunger is getting ridiculous. There is more fruit in a rich man's shampoo than on the plate of a poor man. I'm going to repeat that. There is more fruit in a rich man's shampoo than on a poor man's plate. Don't you think that's a wonderful graphic? In the US alone, 400 million tons of food is wasted each year. We can end world hunger. Now, some of you are going to need to go to food banks to get food. And quite honestly, what the food banks are supplying at the moment will seem like a feast. Interesting. But when you think of the food that you waste, I want you to be disgusted. I have been actually quite surprised since I have moved here. I have noticed that my waste has absolutely diminished. I don't know why. I do know that I'm composting every day, any food. Why? Because anything that I cannot, maybe the lettuce leaves wilted or whatever, I'm, putting that into compost, which in turn will turn into good earth, which in turn will feed, will help grow stuff. I'm thinking the circle of life, big time now. Now, this is an interesting perspective. Sam Kinison said this: you know what the problem is with world hunger? We've been sending them food. Now, what Sam Kinison meant was that, you remember that saying, if you give a man a fish, he eats for a day, but if you teach him how to fish, he will eat for a lifetime. However, what Sam Kinison forgets is, along with the pandemic, we have got global warming. So there's not much point in giving lessons on how to grow your food to people whose earth is so hot that it will scorch any seedling that goes in the ground and not be able to grow. I want you to think about that. You see, I am so lucky here in southern British Columbia with beautiful weather most of the time, and lots of water. All the things that I need. And I am aware, having lived in Africa, that the sun bakes the ground so that it cracks. There is no plant alive that is going to grow in cracked, hard soil. You need rain, you need water. And so global warming has changed everything as well. So I see this as a perfect storm that is hitting. And I want us to be aware, because maybe we need to do things differently. John Denver said, many things made me become a vegetarian, among them the higher food yield as a solution to world hunger. Remember what I showed you about the green pepper. Green pepper has seeds. Plant the seeds. I've got enough food to feed, the whole street just from one red pepper. I'm pretty certain it doesn't take very many of these for me to be able to give herbs to the whole street if they want it. Or I'll just put a box at the end of my driveway every day and say free, and see how many people appreciate that. Oh, not appreciate it. Sorry, that's the wrong word. But how many people take the opportunity? That's what my plan is. And remember, for those of us who bake bread or whatever, you have no idea how valuable bread will be for people that can't cook. There are people in the world so hungry that God cannot appear to them except in the form of bread. Mahatma Gandhi said that so many years ago, that for some people, just a piece of bread is a miracle. No one, nowhere, at no time should go hungry. How many of you think that? Which is why I am busy asking the long-term residents here, who do we have in the community who's vulnerable? Because, maybe we need to help feeding them soon. Maxine Hong Kingston said, hunger also changes the world. When eating can't be a habit, neither can seeing. How many of you know that some people think that eating is their right, their privilege, and therefore they will not want to share. They will not want to look out for their neighbor. They will want to be looking after themselves. And Jody's saying, no coincidence, you were placed in your community for a purpose, I believe. Well, I think I said that, Jody, when I first came here. I thought I was totally a duck out of water. I really did. But then I do believe that there aren't coincidences. And if you remember, Jody, I said to you, it's going to be interesting to see why I need to be here. Right? And it is quite funny because I already can see that I'm beginning to have an impact. When people are saying to me, well, we're not allowed to do this, that, and the other. And I said, really? If I wanted to do that, I'd do it anyway. And they're going, yeah, that's a good point. So, I will find out in my own way. In terms of the short-term objective, halving world hunger by 2015, this was what he said. That position I have always taken is that we don't need genetically modified organisms. Jeannie, absolutely. Jeannie, it's your daughter's birthday today, I believe. Am I correct in that? Happy birthday to your daughter. Jeannie, listen to this. It's a wonderful quote from her. She's saying, feeding people can be a labor of love. You know that, Jeannie, because you do it all the time. You see, that is what I'm saying. I cannot change the world. But if I can help you, tomorrow is her birthday. Oh, that's right, the same day as Manon. You're quite right. Silly me. It's Beth's grandchild's. Is that Lucas? Birthday today. There are people in the world who are going to need our help. Gerald Kent said, I want to end global hunger by feeding half the world starving people to the other half. I mean, that's pretty. In other words, we got way too many people on the planet. So Kelly Preston, married to John Travolta. Anyway, Kelly Preston said, I would like to end world hunger and create world peace, to stop corruption and stop drugs getting to kids. The world hunger is getting ridiculous. Yep, and we talked about that one already. Wow. This is this is a quote. I'm not sure when the quote came out, but it said 925 million people are hungry and 1,300,000,000,000,000,000 billions of of food is wasted. All right. So that is why I am saying, oh, Jody says I'm right about Kelly Preston being married to John Travolta. My two brain cells are going in the right direction today. I'm so grateful. So think about that. You know, we got a staggering thing happening. In this world, there is one thing that is more dangerous and scary than a tiger, and that is poverty and hunger. So remember, you know, what Mother Teresa said, you know, don't worry about feeding the world. If every one of us could feed one more person with this coming problem, you know, we'll be doing well. You know, one of the ways I can remember, for example, during the war years, I can't remember this, but, you know, but you hear stories about this, was, you know, they were running out of aluminum to build aircraft. So what they did is they just said, everybody, you know, go to your kitchen and bring out an aluminum pan and, you know, put it in the street because we're going to be collecting. And people gave up their aluminum pans so that they could build more aircraft. You know, it takes us all to contribute to make this better if we can. How about this one? We cannot fight against poverty and hunger in the world when our stomachs are full of delicious food. The fighters must feel poverty, not imagine it. And that is why I'm saying to you, please start reducing your usage. It's going to be less of a shock. And it's going to leave more food for the people who need it. Veganism, for those of you who are vegans, veganism doesn't only save animals' lives. Tonight, a child will go hungry while cattle eat 16 pounds of grain just to make 1 pound of beef. Good point. Reduce your amount of meat. And remember that it could go down to 1 pack of cards size a week. Robert Ingersoll said, "We rise by lifting others." The hunger for love is much more difficult to remove than the hunger for bread. Also, I want you to get a mentality. Jody was saying that part of her way of reducing waste is to continue doing her fasting. Because by fasting, she is using less and therefore saving more. Interesting perspective, right? But she doesn't see it as a hardship. She sees it as a healthier way for her to live because she's found out it brings her health benefits. Interesting. So again, it's about a mentality. Don't think about what you can't do, think about what you can. Jody, I have to report to you, and it's really quite weird, that I now am into this mindset where I don't start thinking about food until 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And, you know, that's thanks to you. And, you know, then I start thinking about making food, you know, prepping food for the day. One of the things that I find interesting, though, as soon as I start eating, then I'm on a roll. You know what I mean? It's like then I get hungry. It's most peculiar. And I wonder how many of you, when you were at school, participated in a fast of any sort and thought that, you know, a 24-hour fast was amazing. Imagine if you had to do that every day. Because some children do. Jeannie is saying before breakfast in school, when I'm teaching 7th graders, I had a student not wanting to study. I asked why, and one said, I'm hungry. I bought all the kids milk, and then we had class. Yes. The kids my kids were from the farms. So, sorry, my kids were farm kids doing early morning chores. Yeah, I think you're very right, Jeannie. It's been proven that children who don't have breakfast right don't just can't learn as well, and they can't concentrate as well or whatever. I think it's we're going to have to think about that, not just here where you live in the States or here in Canada, but what about those kids that are already starving around the world, and it's about to get a lot worse. It's about to get a lot worse. So be aware. Christina Aguilera said, the beautiful faces of the children I've met in Rwanda and in other countries are with me every day and fuel my passion to raise awareness of the global hunger issue. That's why I'm urging everyone to join me and pass the cup for YUM, Brand's World Hunger Relief effort. Together, we can move millions of children from hunger to hope. And Jodie's saying, Judy, that was so kind of you, to buy the children milk. But that's what Jeannie does. If you listen to Jeannie, she's feeding the helpless, the homeless. She does a lot to help people less fortunate. It's interesting that Jody is saying, and she's been intermittent fasting for some time. I've become so sensitive to feeling overly full that it literally makes me ill. Yeah. But again, how much weight have you lost by doing that? Right? Think about that, Jody. Nonviolence can truly flourish when the world is free from poverty, hunger, discrimination, exclusion, intolerance, and hatred. When women and men can realize their highest potential and live in a secure and fulfilling life. Until then, each and every one of us would have to contribute collectively and individually to build peace through nonviolence. I just need to have a little moment here because I saw on the news today that the father and son who hunted down and killed a jogger will not be charged with a hate crime. The jogger being a colored person. And this is in Georgia. And the reason that they will not be charged with a hate crime is because there is no hate crime law in Georgia. Did you know that? So it's okay to hunt somebody down and kill them? Really? Or rather, they will be tried for murder. But, really, think about that. This is 2020, and Georgia does not have a hate crime bill. They had one back in 2002, I think, or something, but it got struck down. Now, this was a quote from goodness knows when, but guess what? I don't think it is true anymore because it says by 2030, no one will go hungry anywhere in the world. I disagree with what just happened with the pandemic, what is happening. And by the way, so we all know, what we all know is this is the beginning of this pandemic, not the end. This is the beginning. The place to which God calls you is the place where your deep gladness and the world's deep hunger meet. The way that we can best help feed the world will be by eating less. I also think that by throwing away less. How much food is going to be destroyed because all the restaurants closed? Can you think about how much food right now probably is being plowed under because they cannot sell it? And how many of you are going, but why don't they pack that up and send it over to India or whatever? Good question. Think about that. Hunger is the world's greatest solvable problem. You know, I cannot tell you how important it is for you to realize just how fortunate we are. I can remember when I was in Africa, for example, and one of the things that I constantly did, I lived on a rural farm, and the men worked a small holding, not a big farm, a small holding, and the men, in the area all worked on the small holdings, but the women, what I did is I used to get the women together and teach them skills. All right. And I would teach them in those days things like macrame or macrame, depending on which country you live in. I would teach them how to do that and help. I would help them by supplying the materials for the first one, and then they'd sell that, and then they'd come back and and we just let them learn. And I taught them how to grow their own food. I in different ways, and it was like they knew certain things, but not a lot. And I said, it's really important that you learn these things. How to make extra money is also important, right? People will make extra money by just being able to crochet something soon. It's important stuff. And to me, it's really, I've lived around poverty. I know what it looks like, and it's not pretty. It's not pretty. Poverty is like punishment for a crime that you didn't commit. Which is true, right? Nobody grows up wanting poverty. Nobody gets born going, oh, I think I'd like to starve today. But isn't it interesting that Jodi's found out that starving for a day doesn't kill you? All right, as long as you are, doing the right thing. How many of you would be prepared to go 24 hours without food so somebody else could eat? I think quite a few of my viewers. Honor the hands that harvest your crops. I think pretty soon the people out in the fields are going to be the people we're out banging pots and pans for. Jeannie says in 1970-71, I lived on a Israeli kibbutz and worked there. In the care of factory, pulling sugar beet weeds, pruning grapes, hard work. In a carrot factory, right. Yeah, so, the kibbutz system is very clever, Jeannie. And for those of you who don't know, that's in Israel. They have a kibbutz system where, the community lives together and is self-sustaining. They grow a lot of their own vegetables. The community is self-sufficient in its own way. Right. So Jodi's saying, I intend to continue fasting regardless of the rationing status. This is my way of life for the rest of my life. Yes, because Jodi, you have found that for you, it has had benefits, and that is important. Great. Maybe not for everybody, but for you, it has worked wonders. In today's world, hunger for sanity seems to be more intense than our hunger for food. Say that again. In today's world, hunger for sanity seems to be more intense than our hunger for food. How many of you know that people are beginning to get more antsy? People, when they get antsy, get more angry. People, when they get more angry, get more violent. So again, be prepared for more demonstrations, get prepared for more acts of violence, and know that we probably cannot do much to save them and stop them. We need to keep ourselves safe. Every moment is an organizing opportunity. Every person a potential activist. Every minute a chance to change the world. You see, I'm not concentrating on changing the world. I'm concentrating, how do I look after my street? Is there any way that I can do that? One in seven people are hungry, and 1 in 7 people are hungry, and 1/3 of food produced in the world is wasted. It is said that we all have families who are longing for peace in the world and end to the suffering caused by poverty, disease, and hunger. Untold numbers of our friends, our neighbors, our parents, and our children are hoping that there is more understanding and more generosity, more genuine friendship, and more caring among the people of all faiths and cultures. Jeff Bridges, the actor, said, "I first got involved with ending world hunger, and I got hip to the facts about it. What a huge problem it was, and how it wasn't a matter of not having food or not knowing how to end it, but it was a matter of creating the political will." You see, we can have all this waste going on, but until politically somebody says, yes, we're going to be shipping to help those who are dying, except, think about it this way. What if we could send a care package? If you think about it, one care package would help an awful lot of people. Right? One care package to a village in Africa. But it's funny what people will send. They'll send the wrong things. That is the interesting thing. And I'm going to be seeing Dougie tomorrow. And as you know, Dougie is originally from Kenya and his family is from Kenya, and they are already having the poverty problem there. I'm going to be talking to him about what he thinks they need. Yes, and Jeannie is saying that, sad to say, but sometimes the food does not get to the hungry due to politics. Yeah, and sometimes you can send the food and it doesn't get past customs. Why? The people doing customs are hungry. Those sort of things go on all around the world. And we need to be aware. Malnutrition already before the pandemic. Malnutrition affects almost 40% of children under 5 in sub-Saharan Africa, approximately 10 times the prevalence rate in the US. Right? And I hope that my viewers understand why I feel it necessary to talk about this. You know, as I go through this whole broadening our perspective, you know, I talked at the very beginning about food rationing. And can you see why I think it is important that we understand it now? Because when you start realizing what is happening to the poverty was already happening before the pandemic, and we've got pandemic and the combination of global warming. Pretty darn scary stuff. Yes, Jody is saying so true. There were many problems with Live Aid benefit concert and the distribution of grain. It sat rotting in warehouses. Oh, I want to tell you, Jody, there are horror stories about that. One of the reasons is, you know, at one time in my life, I was a Rotarian, and one of the reasons that a Rotary does a lot of sending stuff. What Rotary doesn't do is to send food to another nation. What they do is they send money to the Rotary Club in the other nation and let the Rotary Club buy the food locally, right, and feed their community. Does that make sense? It's very clever. No shipping costs, no whatever. They just send the money to the village. Or to the local Rotary Club near the village, and then have the Rotary Club go feed the village. Clever. Stealth, as Jody says. And, you know, what they found is, you know, they were saving so much money with transport costs and everything. And then they also used that money that they saved, obviously, it bought them more food. So it was a win-win. So as long, you know, you might know people in Africa, right? It might be a better idea to send them money so they can go and take that money, buy food, and feed somebody locally, rather than trying to send food. Yeah, it's. I want to tell you something. I always thought that was such a clever idea, not to send the food. I can remember one person saying to me, now, you'll forgive me for this one because I had a young person say to me she was so excited she'd organized to buy 2 goats for a family in Mexico so that they could, you know, have milk and food, right? A pair of goats that would produce little goats called kids, you know, and but the goats in turn would provide milk. And I said, "Oh, that's wonderful." And she said, "Yeah, and I'm going down there to go deliver them to the family." And I said, "Wow, that is awesome, but why would you do that?" And she said, "What?" She said, "Because, you know, I got the goats so that I can go deliver them." And I said, "Yes, but why would you spend how much money on an airplane ticket? How much money on hotels? How much money on taxis? How many more goats could you buy with that money?" And she said, "Wow, I never thought about it like that." So I want you to be thinking about that, right? Sometimes so much money is wasted for the wrong reasons. And stopping waste starts in my kitchen. I want you to concentrate this week on stopping waste in your kitchen, if you possibly can. And I'll be very interested to hear your stories. Very interested. I'm hoping that this is making a little more sense to you. We're going to do the countdown. And for those of you who don't know, we do the countdown every week. And we still end up late for Christmas. Okay, here we go. We've got 9 months and 11 days until Valentine's Day. We've got 230 shopping days left until Christmas. We've got 6 months and 27 days until we need to get our cards into the mail for Christmas. US Thanksgiving is 6 months and 22 days away. Plan to have it different this year. It's going to be different. Canadian Thanksgiving is earlier, as you know. We have ours in October, and it is 5 months and 7 days away. US taxes, you've got 2 months left, and Canadian taxes, we've only got 24 days left. The interesting thing for me is that I moved here into my new place 3 months, nearly 4 months ago. So I've been here nearly a third of a year already, and you're probably wondering, how's the unpacking going, Sal? Well, the good news for those of you who are regulars is I have now managed to unpack about half the stuff in the studio. Unfortunately, that has created havoc in my craft room because I'm pulling boxes out of there and sorting the boxes. And so I've got boxes of sorted stuff all over the craft room, but that's okay. Sometimes you have to break eggs to make an omelet, right? In other words, I've got to empty the boxes to see what's in them, to then categorize them and everything, and then decide what I want to keep and what I don't want to keep. And that's what I'm doing. By the way, having my pathetic little garbage can about the size of a flip-top can that I am allowed to fill once every 2 weeks also has been very interesting in this process. But what I have found is that what I do is, if I've got more garbage, that I just put it into big plastic bags that I bought to move stuff. I just put it in there, and then every 2 weeks, when I finish putting in my regular garbage, I top it up and then ship it out. But I'm amazed how much of the stuff I throw away is actually recyclable. So that's pretty good. So being about halfway through what was going to be my studio, I'm now beginning to think that I might actually turn it into a spare room, because I am so aware that I will be painting here or on my dining room table. The only thing is I will probably use the spare room to dry stuff. And I'm also thinking that because I get such pleasure out of making beer mats and things, I just might do my art on smaller things. Takes much less paint and high reward, and make more trivets and things that I love to make. So unpacking, I do it on Mondays. That's how I do it now. On Mondays I open up boxes. I'm trying to think how many I've got left in the bedroom. I've got about 10 stacked in the bedroom still. And you're probably surprised, but those 10 came from my garage originally, I think. They were hidden somewhere. So they're full of things that probably need to be thrown away. But all I do is every Monday, I take one more box and open it up, and I leave it open all week. And as I go by it, I just take a couple of bits out and go, and then I'm spending an extra hour now in the studio every week just to get that emptied. But I'm not trying to unpack every day, because the majority of it now is unpacked. Now it's the crud. And by the way, because Doug is coming tomorrow, I'm going to have to make a pathway so he can get from that patio door in the craft room through to the washroom when he comes to visit me. And I'm really, very blessed that he is coming. And for those of you who celebrate Mother's Day this weekend, I wish you a very happy Mother's Day. And I just am very touched. Made a point of coming to, has made a point of coming tomorrow to visit me. That's really kind of him. But that's Doug, right? So I'm hoping that today's subject is something that you understand is not fun necessarily, but very important for us to understand. Very important for us to see that not wasting food, not wasting, learning to look after ourselves. Part of the reason I want to do this, as you know, is everything that I can grow and feed myself and my neighbors with is one less thing I will need to buy in the store. And I want you to think about the third world countries that will be impacted very severely. I want you to think about this, rural communities all over the world that are already suffering from drought and hunger, and now are going to get the pandemic. And in a way, some of you will say maybe it is God's way of, lowering the population so that we will have more. And those of you who think like that, I understand that that is possibly one way of looking at it. There is a lot of talk now about metal detectors and gun control, but both are good things. But they are no more a solution than forks and spoons are to a solution to world hunger. It's about a mentality. We've got to fix the global mentality. And how do we do that? I think we do it one person at a time. I think that each one of us has the ability to make change. And we don't have to make change throughout the world. As you can see, my job here is just to learn from my neighbors. And this is not about just what I can teach them. This is what can they teach me. And it is arrogant of me to think that I am just here to teach them. Maybe the reason I had to come here was to learn a lot. And, that is something you might want to think about. What do we need to learn? Rowan Keating said, "It is also a testament to the role that Ireland and its citizens have played towards combating world hunger, poverty, and underdevelopment in agricultural and rural development." And it's what can we teach one another? All right. I found it really interesting and it made me smile. I'm busy growing my, I've got herbs and chives in the garden growing beautifully and rosemary growing beautifully. And I've been giving it to my neighbor. Well, guess what? She said to me, Sal, I'm going to grow mine next year. And I said, there you go. So I'm slowly doing that. By the way, I commented on their rhubarb plant and they bought me a rhubarb plant for my garden. Well, I am really looking forward to having rhubarb as part of my diet again. Because it is so important, right, to enjoy these. I need to work out how to grow more fruits, or to start dehydrating them right now, because I won't have fridge space. Martin Luther King said this, "I have the audacity to believe that people everywhere can have 3 meals a day for their bodies, education and culture for their minds, and dignity, equality, and freedom for their spirits." Martin Luther King said that how many years ago? And 2 men in Georgia hunted down a black jogger and killed him. Hunted him down with their pickup trucks and pulled out their shotguns and killed him. Makes you wonder, doesn't it? All right, Jody's saying one quote that was coming to my mind was, there are two ways to look at life, that nothing is a miracle or everything is. And that reminds me to always have a grateful heart. Yes, how often have you heard me say, Jody, what if this is as good as it gets? What if this is the new normal and social distancing is now a way of life forever? But, I've got neighbors across the street that keep having visitors over. And they are just across the street from me. And I'm going, I need to not care. I cannot change them if they cannot see the danger. They're going to learn it the hard way. But you and I both know because of their actions, other people will die. So what I have said to the community, because we do go out at 7 and bang our pots and pans to be grateful for the frontline people, is that we have one member of the group that goes out every night that just doesn't understand social distancing. And so what I said was, if that person doesn't learn how to socially distance, I'm going to need to stop going. You see, that is up to us. Marnie, my friend Marnie, was telling me, she lives in a duplex, as I used to, and she lives in a duplex, and guess what? The neighbors on the other side keep going out to dinner with friends. And then, Marnie was saying the husband tried to walk up to her to talk to her about something, and she had to stop him. And he still kept coming forward, so she kept walking backwards and saying, I need you to stay at least 6 feet away from me. Oh, I don't have it. Going, you don't know that. So, we're going to have stupid people. The locust continues to devour the world, hunger persists, and love lurches on, listing to starboard, like a ship in a bottle. Human longing goes on, and loneliness, a curse, innocence persists, ignorance persists. How many of you know that our mental health crisis is also coming? There are going to be so many people who cannot cope with this. They grew up in a life of privilege. They grew up in a life of, I'm really concerned for our young people who have not really had to work or fight for anything. They didn't have to do chores to get pocket money. I am so grateful, when I watch Benji teaching the children about, okay, you want an allowance? Well, this is how you earn it. Bring in the garbage cans, clean the table, do this, that, and the other. He's teaching them the value of money, and I think it's wonderful. Warren Buffett, for some of you know, extremely powerful financier, known for the Berkshire Hathaway Group. He said, I've had it so good in this world, The odds were 50 to 1 against me having been born in the United States in 1930. I won the lottery that day, and I emerged from the womb by being in the United States instead of some other country where my chances would have been way different. And, I think that's a very rational way for him to think. Those of us who live in a first world country are very, very lucky, but those of us who live in a first world country are also, whether we like it or not, responsible for looking after those who are not as fortunate. And just because we live in a privileged world, and by the way, I remind myself on a daily basis that I am in the top 5% of the world. I have a roof over my head. I have food in my fridge. I have electricity. I turn on a faucet and cold running water comes out. I do not have to walk 5 hours to find water or 4 hours to find wood. I am in the top 5% of the world. I have a pension that gets sent to me every month. I don't have to work for that anymore. That just is my reward for having worked so long in the past in a country where we look after pensioners. But I am amongst the top 5% in the world because so many countries don't have pensions. And by the way, all those old people are going to be as vulnerable as the very young. All right, Jeannie is saying there are some young people running away here in Maine. So difficult for the parents, but the kids do not like quarantining. Yeah, unfortunately, Jeannie, as I said to you, it's going to happen and it's going to get worse. And it must be heartbreaking for the parents. And we can only pray that they dodge the bullet and that they will see that by doing what they're doing, they are increasing their risk. By the way, did you know that there is one continent that doesn't have the virus? Did you know that? I was looking at that today. Antarctica, touch wood. Oh, there's wood. Touch wood does not have any of the virus at this time. And you know, all those people living in those faraway base camps and so forth are among the most fortunate in the world because they're safe at the moment. So I ask you, and I thought this was a really beautiful quote. I ask you to be a pineapple, stand tall, wear a crown, be sweet on the inside. I ask you to be aware. And also think about this. When food waste decomposes, it releases methane, as we know, which is 25 times more harmful than carbon dioxide. And, you know, it's interesting that if we could lower the amount that we throw away, we will lower the amount of harmful gases. Isabel, thank you. I'm glad that you found it of value. I know that I was really wondering whether I should do this broadcast. I didn't want to put fear and panic into people, but on the other hand, I really did want you to know that I think it could happen. And you know, if you are prepared and not scared, then you will start looking at that now. You'll start looking at the food in your pantry and saying, how much food that I am buying is food that will last? Or am I just buying food that will go off? I have started buying more frozen food at the moment just because I can get it. And, you know, because then I only use what I need. It's not going to go off. It's frozen food. Just fruit, sorry, frozen fruit. And I allow myself to buy a couple of apples and a couple of oranges each week, so I can have that fresh, but I don't buy as much as I used to, and I'm not wasting as much as I used to. So be prepared and not scared is what I will continue to try and help you with. I'm hoping that you can see that it could save your life and the lives of others. And it's really funny for those of you who don't know. I've actually created a sort of sitting area at the front of my house, something I didn't think I would ever do, but I've created this. I've got my hammock out there, and I've got chairs out there, and it's really funny because what I've noticed is that I go out there now, and just so that I can see people walking, by, and I can talk to them, at a social 20 yards or 20 feet without any problem. You see, we're going to find different ways to be sociable. And yet I saw my neighbor on the other side yesterday walk right up to people and start talking to them. And I'm going, really? That's dangerous. And so I continue to socially distance. And what I've done is I put my chairs at a socially distant space so that people can come and visit and sit down for a while and chat, but they are at least 6 foot away from me. So let's keep doing this. And that other people are not going to care. Other people are not going to do it. Other people are going to believe it's their right to go to the movies. It's their right to go to the casino. It's their right to do, and they're, fine. But don't be surprised when we have even more deaths. We're going to have a lot more. It's a DearMamaSal saying, please be prepared and not scared, and keep working at it. And I'll keep doing the experiments here if you are enjoying them. I'm hoping that it will inspire some of you to at least try it as well. And if you do, let me know, and I will answer what questions I can. By the way, I do put nutrients in the water when I'm doing this hydroponic. So just so that you know that. All right, everybody, have a wonderful time. I'll see some of you this evening. We'll be doing our regular 7 o'clock Pacific time broadcast here on YouTube tonight. This is DearMamaSal saying thanks for being here. Remember, we're lucky to eat. Bye-bye for now. See you soon.